Welcome to our Waldner Academy and our Labcafé online. And thanks a lot that so many people are joining us. My name is Alexander Biller, and I'm looking forward to share a lot of educational inspiration with you. Our topic today, Global STEM Labs, impulses for tomorrow's learning spaces. And you know, in recent decades, STEM labs have always looked the same. Fixed classroom and science lab along a long corridor imparting knowledge by means of frontal teaching. The world and the way of learning has changed radically. Together, we will take a journey around the world and discover new spaces that optimally promote 21st century skills. And we have really fantastic speaker today. Impulse number one is what are the trends for future learning from Svenja Busson, co-founder and managing director, LearnSpace from France. And Svenja is a global learning innovation explorer with her think tank EdTech Tours. She traveled 19 countries to identify the most innovative teaching and learning practices. She's author of Exploring the Future of Education, a book about education innovations from Europe. She co-founded EdTech France and the European EdTech Alliance, and the list is endless. I think she's a kind of Wonder Woman. So Svenja, I'm so excited that you're part of our event. Impulse number two is about why do we need completely new layouts? With Elena Aralova, she's executive director from Martella, Russia. And Elena is an absolutely expert for educational architecture and inspiring learning spaces. She and her team designs, manage construction, and equips the most innovative Russian schools. She has the gift to combine architecture, interior design, and equipment to foster 21st century skills in the best way. So Elena, it's an honor that you are here to share your experience with us. And the last impulse, impulse number three, is from my side. I will talk about how can we develop inspiring STEM labs. I will show 4 very exciting concept studies from German schools of the future. At the end, we have a Q&A session. So if you have questions, write it in the chat and we can answer that at the end of the session. So I would say, let's start. Take a good cup of coffee and be inspired. Svenja, c'est ton tour. Je suis très contente.
Thank you, Alexander. Wonderful. I'm super happy to be here with you today. And I prepared a short presentation about what I've been, exploring across the globe, what type of schools I've seen, what are the most innovative, institutions, but also initiatives, and, how we can also use technology, because my work is focused on pedagogical innovations, but also technological innovations at the service of the future of education and learning. So let's jump right into it. I hope you can see my screen appearing now.
Yes, perfect, Svenja.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, okay, so as I said, I'm going to tell you a bit more about what I've discovered during my EdTech tours. It's a think tank that I started a few years back, at least 7 years now. Wow. And so I traveled the globe when I could, when COVID wasn't in our lives. Basically, I've done that since when I was still a student when I started this, and when I wanted to look out for other types of universities, other types of schools out there, because I was quite a frustrated student and I wanted to see how we could teach and learn more effectively and be more engaged as students, because I think engagement is the key of everything. So I started with the EdTech tour, exploring these 19 countries, Then I looked at, technology as part of innovative education, and I looked at best practices in technology integration, and I met a lot of startups, and then I created some trade associations representing startups in this field and the education technology field, both in France and on the European level. And I also wrote a book. I'm going to tell you a bit more about that book. The second version just got out 2 weeks ago. So basically, these are the different tours that I've been on. I'm going to tell you about the 3 first ones. Asia is happening at the end of this year, if everything is happening as planned, but you never know nowadays. And the Americas next year. So these are the 19 countries where I've been to, and all of them were very different. So you always have to think about the local context. So what I saw in Finland, for example, I was really amazed by what I saw in Finland and in the Nordics, in Estonia, for example. But you cannot copy paste what's happening in one country to another, because the context plays such an important role. And so it is absolutely key to get to understand that context better. And so in each country where I've been, the first thing that I've done is really to understand the political context, the historical context, and a lot about the context behind every education system. In Finland, for example, teachers are very well regarded, and it's like the profession that every high school student wants to do, and it is very competitive and highly regarded, and so it also plays a huge role on how the Finnish education system works, because teachers are so highly regarded and we trust them, and so it changes a lot of things. But you also have to be aware about how and why this is. It's because Finland has to thank teachers for their independence from Russia, because they played a huge role in helping Finland get independent and helping Finnish kids to feel more Finnish, and that's really important. So because they played such a huge role at the beginning of the 20th century, they also are super well regarded in society as of today. So really the context is huge, super important, and that's why it's hard to tell that is a super great practice and we have to copy paste it and put it in other countries. It's almost impossible, because context matters so much. So I wanted to tell you about the skills that I see for the world of work, the skills that are relevant in terms of getting a job and becoming and staying employable, versus the skills that we are taught in schools and universities. So in your opinion, please write in the chat or in the Q&A box what you think are the top 10 skills, or one of them or 2 of them, to become and stay employable in 2025. What are these skills in your opinion? Tell me now in the chat. What do you think are the skills that are most important to become and stay employable? Alexander, if you can have a look at the chat and let me know what the answers are, that would be awesome. So skills, in your opinion, that are most relevant and that matter most in terms of employability today and up until 2025, because honestly, we don't really know what's happening after that. Things are changing so fast that, so what do we have? Do we have some answers yet?
At the moment, nothing.
Okay. What do you think, Alexander, should be the skills of the future? What are these skills in your opinion?
Yeah, we always talk about the 4 C's. I think communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. These are 4 really important things.
Absolutely. The 4 C's are super important. And yeah, we used to to talk a lot about these 4Cs. Now they're very relevant, and other skills came up to that list, but they don't start with a C. So we cannot say the 10 Cs, but these are the skills that I'm talking about. Top 10 skills according to the World Economic Forum and their Future of Jobs report and research. They asked thousands of HR directors and CEOs of companies worldwide, and they asked them, what are the skills that are most important to you when you're hiring nowadays? And the skills that came up are analytical thinking and innovation, being able to learn actively. So learning how to learn is an important skill. Complex problem solving, critical thinking, as we said, with the 4Cs, creativity, we said it, leadership, social influence, technology use, monitoring and control. That's important. All the tech skills, design, programming, etc. Then resilience, stress tolerance, flexibility in a world that changes so fast. You know, when COVID happened, organizations had to be resilient. Reasoning, problem solving, ideation. So basically 4 types of skills: problem solving, self-management, working with people, and technological use and development. And these skills, when you think of these skills, and when you think of the skills that we learn in schools and universities, I mean, there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap, a huge skills gap existing nowadays. So what do? How do we bridge that gap? And how do we bring these more relevant skills to K-12 education, kindergarten to 12th grade education, and higher education? So I'm going to give you some examples of inspiring learning innovations worldwide. So the first one that I wanted to share with you is an example from New Zealand. A very interesting school, a public school in the very deprived area of Auckland, the capital city of New Zealand. And so, you know, these kids going into that school, 95% of the kids there are from a Maori background, and Maoris are the first tribes to, the very first tribes to basically live and discover New Zealand. And so their mother tongue is not English, although the whole curriculum in New Zealand is in English. So they have huge difficulties in learning. And for the purpose of getting these kids the right education and adapting the education system to them, to their needs, the school director decided to create a whole new pedagogy. And in New Zealand, school directors, school leaders can do that because they are independent. All these schools are public schools. 99% of the schools are public schools, but they have a lot of independence. And they can decide on what pedagogy they want to put in place, how they train their trainers and professors, what type of technological tools they want to put in place. They have a special budget for that. So there is a lot of independence. And I think that's key. You know, independence in terms of decision making is absolutely key to get a country to innovate in education, in my opinion, rather to have a very centralized system where the states or the regions are the only ones to decide about what's happening in the schools. So this is a very, very innovative system in New Zealand. And so in that school, the school leader with the professors, together, they designed a new model called the Learn, Create, Share framework. It's a framework where, yes, it's a primary school. Kids need to learn how to think, how to write, how to count, how to read, and they have to learn it in a traditional manner. So traditional classrooms still exist, and they learn all of these skills. But how they learn it is completely different. They learn it by creating, using their creativity. So that's my point here. Is really how can you make sure to teach creativity through pedagogy? You know, that type of pedagogy where they are asked at the end of each module, at each chapter, to create something out of their learning. For example, in history, and I was there during a history class where they had to learn about Nelson Mandela and the apartheid. And at the end, the teacher asked them to, put themselves in groups and make sure that they learn together while creating an artwork on Nelson Mandela. And so they created an artwork. Some of them draw a drawing, some of them did a sculpture, some of them wrote a poem, another song. That's how basically they worked on their artwork together as a team. And so that's an example of how they can be empowered to create something. And it's not like their typical quiz at the end of, an exam, or, at the end of a chapter, you don't get an exam. You are, incentivized to create something extraordinary and something that you will remember forever. And that's a type of learning that sticks in your memory. So that's very important. Then you have the share aspect. The share aspect, because all of these kids, starting from 2nd grade, have their personal blog where they can express themselves about their learning. So every week on Friday, they have a special learning block where, with their English teacher, they learn to write in English. At the same time, they learn about thinking, this thinking behind, okay, what did I learn this week? What did I want to, retain? What do I really want to, keep? And then they share something about their learning, one of their learnings in class, or, at home, or something they learned, and they write a blog post about it. And every week they do the same thing. And it really motivates them to see, oh, wow, it's been 50 weeks that I've learned things, and to see all of these blog posts, that's for them quite amazing. And this pedagogy had such a huge impact that the school adopted it. The grades went super high, and other schools, similar schools in the same area, started to adopting the same pedagogy, the same framework. And now I think 15 schools are using that framework, using that pedagogy, and seeing the results, the exam results, the national exam results, getting better and better. So, Alexander, do we have some questions up until now? And if not, that's fine. I can answer them at the very end, but I just want to make sure we don't have any questions.
Yeah, at the moment, thanks a lot, Svenja. We don't have questions. There are the answers for of your question in the chat. So,
excellent.
So everything good. There were answers, for example, programming, problem-solving skills, being good at learning, engineering, working agile and fast-paced, sustainability, awareness.
Awesome.
These were the points for the future.
Very good. For the 21st century skills, the skills that are most important to become and stay employable. I agree with the sustainability part, and I think it's missing in the top 10 skills of the World Economic Forum. It's definitely missing, but very good point on sustainability. So thank you for answering this short quiz earlier. I want to go to the second example, an example in Australia, a very interesting school, because it was quite of an elite school in Australia, the Northern Beach and Christian School, elite school, private school, very traditional. And one day, the school leader said, we're not preparing our kids for the future. Yes, we're getting their amazing results in the baccalaureates. Yes, they are going to the best universities, but are they really prepared for the world of work, with a very top-down way of teaching, with classes where they are 30 in rows, and and with a very top-down methodology? And he said, no, we're going to change everything. We're going to restart, the whole thing, and I'm going to imagine the school of the future together with the teachers. So together with the teachers, he created some kind of learning lab where every week they were invited for 1 hour a week to, come with their ideas and discuss ideas, explore ideas. And so for a couple of years, they imagined their school, their ideal school of the future, together with the professors. And so that's very important, because he engaged the teachers from day one, and that's critical. And so at the end of 5 years, of a 5 years journey of imagining that school, he rebuilt the whole school. I mean, he asked for the whole school to be rebuilt. And so now, as you can see, it doesn't really look like a typical school. There's no typical classroom. It's a lot of open spaces, and kids just sit and lie, and the whole space has been redesigned with the pedagogy. So basically, they're taught in an interdisciplinary way. For example, when the physics teacher does, a project with, a history teacher, and they're asked, kids are asked to do a a lot of project-based learning where they have to solve problems, do projects together that last, 1 hour to a week. And it's always interdisciplinary. And, teachers, you can see a teacher here. She's sitting with the students, so it's a lot of group work. It's a lot of project-based learning, and teachers go from one group to another. Groups are level-based, so teachers can really interact with the groups that most need them, and leave the others to be more autonomous. And the pedagogy really is truly amazing, and works really well with the space. So another example of how they work, I mean, in Australia you have the the bring your own device model, the BYOD model. So each student in each Australian school has to bring their own device from home, and schools have a stock of devices for kids who don't have devices at home that they can bring. And so that's, a national scheme in the whole of Australia. And so, they bring their own device and they work on their projects together. So that's a picture that I took with a group of 4 who were working on writing an essay together, and they had to write it for 2 special courses. They were on their Google Docs working, completely collaboratively. And that's how they lie there, and they work, and that's how they feel like working. And it's also interesting to see when you give kids the chance of choosing how they want to work, in which posture. You're quite amused to see that, lying is a typical posture where they're comfortable, and with all these cushions in the middle. I mean, it looks quite cozy, quite comfortable. So for us adults, it might seem like, they don't seem very comfortable, but they were really happy, and obviously they're not spending most of their time in front of the computer. They have lots of activities, but that was during a special course, a 2-hour class where they had to write that essay. So I thought that was interesting to see when you leave them the space, how they use it is interesting. Another really interesting example that I wanted to show from Finland actually has been developed by a service architecture professor called Jarmo Suonimen, a Finnish professor. Really, really amazing what he built, what he imagined. He imagined a school that could be a service platform that could use, spaces across the city, across the town. So the school heart at the center would be like a co-working space where it's a high school. So where students would meet and do their homework together, do some projects together, have lunch together, but that classes would happen in third places in the 2-kilometer radius, from that heart. So they would walk from one place to another in their city, and having their history class in the museum next door, or having their biology class in the STEM lab from the university next door, having their sports class in the public facility, sports facility of the city, having their French class in the French library that is, 800 meters away. And he imagined that concept of a school as a service, of a decentralized school where you decentralized the classes and the environments, to keep only a heart that can be, a space. You don't need to have a huge school with like hundreds of classrooms. You just need to have a co-working space for them to meet up, but then have them move across the city to go to one place to another to have their class. And he started this in Aalto University in Espoo in Finland. And so he put like some kind of a at the beginning, it was just a space that was quite small. The heart was quite small. And then he asked students of this high school to go and have their classes, like economics would be at the local incubator of the Aalto University. There's, biology class would be in the biology lab of the University of Aalto, and etc., etc. And this concept worked really well, and now it's also happening in Shanghai. Another school adopted it in one district in Shanghai. So I think it's also the future of schools, in my opinion, and learning is learning that happens in many different places and makes you move, because moving is absolutely key. We are not supposed to sit, for 8 hours a day and listening to someone talk. So I really like the type of movement that occurs during that, a typical day in that particular high school. So really, really interesting example that I like. Another example that I find super interesting, and I don't know if you heard about this, but it's my last example, so I will. But the Minerva School example, saying how can you use technology to build an extraordinary learning experience? And it's a higher education innovation, basically. It's a school, it's a university that has been created by a former Harvard dean who was sick of, large lecture halls, thousands of students looking at him talking, a very top-down approach to learning. He said, I quit and I start my own university, and it's going to be called Minerva. It's going to be online. And why it's going to be online? Because I want my students to travel the globe and to do a world tour during their studies. So basically, technology is here to support an extraordinary learning experience happening in 7 different worlds, 7 different cities. So they start in San Francisco, 6 months. Then they go to Berlin, 6 months, but with the whole, the whole class, 200 students traveling together from one place to another. And so they completely reinvented the concept of campuses. Do we really need super large campuses that cost a lot of money to maintain if we can have an extraordinary online experience and having the students travel the globe and having these online classes, but remotely? Then they travel to Seoul, to Buenos Aires, to Hyderabad in India, to London, and then Taipei, and for 4 years, it's an undergraduate degree in the US. For 4 years, they have this extraordinary global experience where everywhere they go, the school rents a whole building for students to live together. So they see their fellow students. It's just that their courses happen online with top professors that cannot obviously follow them on their crazy world journey. But yeah, and it's a typical university. First year is focused on soft skills. That's untypical. So the first year of these 4 years is focused entirely on soft skills. They only learn about soft skills. And then they choose their specialty, like in any, university. You choose your major. There are 5 majors. They can choose their major. But the first year is really focused on soft skills, focused on getting them the right skills to succeed. So they learn how to think critically. They organize large-scale debates. They learn about creativity methods, about how to collaborate effectively, etc., etc. So for me, it's a really interesting model, to say, how can we, reinvent higher education? Reinvent the whole experience of higher education thanks to technology, and thanks to what the world can bring us in terms of opportunities. I mean, I would have loved to have such an experience, university experience, of traveling the globe, and for a cost that is quite super effective, if I can say so, for the US context, because there's no campus to maintain. The cost of these studies is divided by 5. So basically, the cost of study is $10,000 per year, which for the US context, again, is quite revolutionary. So yeah, really interesting model, really, really interesting model. So yeah, if you want to go further, I have, written some really, I try to make them insightful. On edtechtours.com, you can see quite a lot of articles and reports. And then I just, as I said, released a new updated version of my book, Exploring the Future of Education, covering lots of examples like I showed you today. There are 24 different examples of innovations in that book from 8 different countries in Europe. So if you want to go further in terms of innovative schools, innovative learning spaces, innovative universities, 24 examples, 8 countries in Europe in that specific book, and you can learn more on exploringeducation.eu. So yeah, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would be super happy to answer all of your questions at the end. So feel free to write them up and ask me these questions at the end of our event. Thank you.
Svenja, thanks a lot for sharing your new book and so much knowledge. I think each of us feels your passion for education. So thanks a lot for your inspiration. I hand over directly to Elena. So, hello, Elena.
Okay, let me share my presentation. First of all, I want to suppose that 2 factors influence a lot on schools for last year. First of one is remote work, and the second one is sharing economy. Remote work and sharing economy are affecting crucially to the schools that it's building. And I want to discuss with you 5 changes that appeared in the new condition. The first one is that school is no longer limited to the school building. Modern education is moving out of the classroom to the nature, to the museum, park, research centers. And that's why our whole urban infrastructure is becoming an educational platform. In the trend of this sharing economy trend, it's more practical to get access to the city's library, city's theater, sport complex, instead of the developing your own gym, library, and theater, probably. It's a just assumption. Maybe you will have another opinion, but still. That's why we want to avoid to get rid of the monofunctional venues and to utilize as much as possible city venues, urban venues. The second one, school infrastructure doesn't have to be dumbed down too simply. It means that school children don't play science. They want to be able to make scientific discoveries on the equal base with adults, to try, to invent, to experiment. That's why the school should have powerful and well-equipped infrastructure blocks like workshops area, laboratories area, art studios, everything like that. The third one, highly specialized research centers provide school with high-tech educational services. It's, by the way, widespread in Russia today. We have ordinary schools, but also we have highly specialized centers that collect data and knowledge and share them with ordinary schools, like hub. Children can come to this hub for a limited period of time for individual work, but supervising by very, very qualified experts, scientists, or very famous poets and everybody like that. For example, we have the Junior Academy of Science in Yakutia in Arctic area. This is a paleontology center that studies the bones and tissue of long dead ancient animals, studies them and try to clone them. And all these research centers share knowledge with ordinary schools and help them to up their level. The fourth, the school expands the circle of experts involved. Schools invite people from outside to give maybe 1 lecture or whole course of classes. Today, not only full-time teachers work in school, but also university professors, business experts, museum or theater employees are also involved in a school activity. This strong and wide school expert community bring children personalization of learning, the most important part, personalization of learning. And finally, children in the middle and high school are free to manage their study time by themselves. It means we talk about the individual schedules. And the matrix of this individual curricula has been created. Groups of children are now of different size, and all these groups are constantly mixed up, form and new. We have to take into account the personal priorities of study, probably the speed of learning, academic performances, and maybe goals. And that's why the degree of freedom depends on the degree of responsibility. What does it mean for building? It means that building could change. And now, please be prepared for shocked content. I want to show you layout of new school that we develop right now. It's a very strange case. So first of all, it's a school in Moscow. We have 5-floor building, and this floor, 5th, is for high school. And we decided to mix it with a teacher's room, with an adult space. And let's look how does it work. We can divide all the space into the 5 parts. It's a service block, it's a public area, semi-public area, and individual area, private area. What does it mean? It means that in the service block, there are a lot of storages, wardrobes, lockers probably, printer zone, copy zone, storages, a lot of services. Then looks at the public area. It looks like a standard typical cafe. Why not? Though we are able to discuss some issues about the learning here, we can have a small group or big group conversation. Why not? And couple lecture zones. Then we have these typical meeting rooms. It looks like a classes, if to be honest. It's with a high sound isolation. We can provide here mathematics or languages, everything that we need to make quite sound isolated. And this is a mixed-use area. It's also for meetings, but very, very flexible. And this is a private area. Let's look how does it works. So it's a public area, cafe, for communication, cooperation, noisy activity. There are a lot of different parts for groups of 4 persons, 5 persons, 8 persons, smaller or bigger. It looks like really as a cafe. Why not? This is a lecture part. It's a transformer, a mobile partition that could divide into the 2 parts or separate in the 2 parts. That's why it's like a lecture room. This is a big space, but all of them are public area for noisy work. Okay, let's go further. It's a private area, silent, and opportunity to focus on your concentration work. It's a lot of acoustic solution. Probably it's an individual desk for personal work, small group work with a high partition, book storages, and of course, media screen that could help you to adapt different content to your purposes. And let's go to another space. It's a meeting area, but very flexible. It's nothing special, but nevertheless, it could help you to adapt your space to purposes you need. For small group, for big group, for lecture, for private personal education. So it's a different type of the activity we could utilize here very easily. The same story here. We can divide space or unite space to change color, to change transparency of the space, and to change content of the media screen on the left part. It's a typical classrooms or maybe meeting rooms for individual work or for group work, for classes. So you see that we decided to be very, very brave to try to adapt this scenario for high school, for people who has its own individual schedule, for people who has its own individual goals. And that's why we have to adapt this space for different purposes. This is a typical school. Another one, it's a small city in the Chelyabinsk region in Russia, and it's very strong academic school. So even in this environment, even in this layout, we can suggest different options of activities in a big classes, in a smaller, in a public areas, in a private rooms. So we have quite wide range of tools. It looks like this one. Nice environment and nice school for different purposes. And this is a kindergarten close to this space. And finally, I want to say that school has lost its monopoly of knowledge. It's clear. We can learn everywhere, at home, on YouTube, online school, in a cafe, everywhere. But the school is still most important social coach, social simulator. At school, we learn to make friends, negotiate, solve conflicts, to manipulate. We learn to learn. That's why I suppose the most important part is a good social environment, a community in which people of the future can grow up. Alexander, that's all.
Okay, thanks a lot, Elena. And thanks a lot for all this fantastic insights. I'm really impressed and inspired by the range and the well-being atmospheres. And if I could, I would go to school again, I think. Good. If you have questions to Elena, and she built many projects in Russia, and they are all amazing and well designed. It's really exciting, the work. So you can go to the website and ask Elena, and if you have questions, write it in the chat. And now we come to impulse number 3. And just a moment, today is a really special day. This morning I got our brand new book, also a book like Svenja, but it's really it's still warm from the printer company, and the name is MintSpace book. It's a German word. It's from Hohenlohe. Hohenlohe is the German education brand of Waldner within the Waldner Group, and Mint is the German word for STEM. So at the moment it's only available in German, but I will share now the coolest projects in English with my presentation. And a quick look in the book. Just a moment. For example, we make some about future of learning, the 4 C's and 21st century skills. We build the schools. We made many interviews with teachers, with students, with architects, and so on. And then we design cool projects. And yeah, it's really new. I'm a little bit proud of it. And now I will share my screen. So thanks a lot. My name is Alexander Biller, and I make a lot of school concepts. Some slides of our new book. So the story is, at first, we divided the book into 3 sections: in a pedagogic part, in a phase 0 process part, and in a space solution part. In the first section, my colleague Dr. Dirk Suhr shows and explains the trends of future learning. We always have a Q&A code for a video in YouTube to learn more about that, and this is on every page in QR code. So the small version, the short version, is written in the book, and the long version you can look to the video. And then together with different people, with a student, with a teacher, with a school director, and an investor and an architect, we built a school. And in order to know the different needs and perspectives, we have interviews with those involved people. And yeah, I already showed you an example. And then we show how to bring all these requirements together in a phase 0 process with an ideation process, and which success factors are necessary for this. And then we develop suitable room concepts for this pedagogic vision. And now I will share some concepts. So we learned a lot about education, about future skills, also from Svenja. And old school is the 7S model. That means students of the same age should achieve at the same goal at the same time, with the same pace, with the same teacher, with the same teaching material, on the same level. This is old school, and this is that doesn't match for all the students. And the room concept or the space concept, which fits to this old model, is the corridor school. So we have a corridor in the middle. In the STEM labs, we have preparation rooms. It's in dark blue, and we have auditorium so that the students can listen to the teacher. This is old school. But what does that mean For new school is competence-oriented, interdisciplinary, project-oriented. There's also a short impulse from the teacher, but then the students, they should collaborate, they should communicate, critical thinking, creativity. So there is much social interaction from the students, and this is the important thing for later for work, for the working world. So the question is, how can the drawing or the school building look like for this new competences? And Elena showed some really exciting examples, and she also showed small rooms, larger rooms, zones which are more transparent or not. And I think this is a great way to realize such space concept and buildings. And we made a study. So you see 5 different possibilities to realize in the same building size different concepts. In the first one, the classic labs, it's the old one, the corridor in the middle, and the auditorium and the preparation room is blue. So the dark blue is preparation, the middle blue is the lab zone, and the green one is general learning spaces. So in the next Lab Plus, we expand the classroom and bring the collection cabinets inside the classrooms so that the students see the experiments and they can they can go to the cabinet and bring the material to their desks. We also activate the corridor here in green. We integrated furniture in the corridor so that the students can go outside and learn theoretical things, can discuss and these things. The third zone concept is an art marketplace in the middle. So you have a marketplace for also experiments which are not dangerous, low-level experiments or normal learning. And the blue one, smaller blue, in the when I go up, not for 32 people or students, it's only for half, 16 up to 20 students, because half of the class is in the marketplace, the other half is in this room, and then also typical classroom sizes or STEM lab sizes where you can teach with frontal teaching 32 students, for example. And one thing is very important. When you build a new school, you also have the old teacher. And the old teacher, that's really difficult to transform everything. So it's in my opinion, a good choice to offer both worlds, typical classroom, but also open learning landscapes and smaller room sizes, so that you can develop also the learning culture and the teacher. So the fourth example is also a mix. You have 2 typical STEM lab classrooms, STEM labs. The dark blue in the middle, the preparation room. So you can go from the learning space, from the open learning space in the safe lab in the preparation room, and also from the classroom side, you can go there. And the other extreme is a completely open lab model. So you have a big marketplace. You have some zoning here. You can separate that with curtains, for example, and you only have small room sizes at the end of the building for safety cabinets, for example, for meeting room and brainstorming room, or if you want to learn very quiet. Good. These are some examples, and now I will share some projects from Germany. The first one is a secondary school in Weimar, and the question was, how can we realize new STEM spaces for competence-oriented interdisciplinary learning? And we also discussed different zones with the architect, with the teacher, with the director, with the investor, and so on. And depending on the pedagogic vision of the school, we decided we should realize number 3, that the favorite. And a result of that could be, and this was the very first concept draft, you see the corridor. We activated the corridor with smart furniture. We also have integrated smart cubes, room sizes between 9 and 12 square meter, where you can collaborate, where you can make an online meeting with another school or with the students which are learning at home, for example. You can make a brainstorming and other things. And then you have the open landscape here with the S, and you can go there to every time and make your experiment your learnings. And here at the top, there's a multi-lab. It's separate with very transparent glass walls. So it's a normal classroom with ceiling systems, so that you can arrange the tables and the settings very flexible. You can make small groups, bigger groups, and so on. And here's a science lab, also with water over the ceiling system and mobile fume hoods, for example. And in the middle, there are the safe labs with fume hoods inside, with safety cabinets and other things. And you can only go there with the teacher together. And here you have a small input arena, auditorium. The teacher can show some students a dangerous experiment or something, and it will record it, the experiment, so that the students can look to that at any time. At the end, we also have a makerspace, an area to make practical things, for example, 3D printing, laser cutter, drilling machine, and outside. And it's always important to go outside to go to the nature. Also on this side, we have a science terrace. On the other side, we have an experiment garden, and you can go there. You can bring your microscopes in the nature. You have plants there, animals. So this is much more interesting for the students than everything is theoretically. So this is one example. I go through very quick. I look to the time. A research center. The green areas are normal classrooms. We always integrate also in normal classroom or areas. These are big areas, learning spaces, areas, small zones for practical work, for interdisciplinary working, so that you can make low-level experiments also in the general learning spaces. But in focus, science labs are here in this building, and here are some examples. And yeah, the most important thing in this concept is that the school is working completely with curtains. You see here, everything is open. You have a green garden with another climate inside also, and you can separate the big area into smaller parts with the curtains. And Elena also showed curtains and other walls to separate big areas. Good. And this is an amazing school. This is a schoolhouse, and they got the German School Award. So in this learning houses, the students learn with much focus. We're very quiet, and in the middle there is the teacher zone. And if they have questions, they can go to the teacher. And if they want to communicate and collaborate and so on, there is another part of the building. And here are some pictures, an input space, a smaller room, and also other furniture to discuss together. And then you can separate yourself with curtains, with furniture to discuss and learn for your own. So it's a really cool mix. And the question was, how can we transform this learning culture into the STEM lab building? And we also made a first concept draft here. You see a marketplace in the middle, you see a big auditorium, and Elena, in the architects of Elena, she also loved to work with auditorium because it's a great atmosphere. And the concept here is, for example, when they make an experiment, they bring it to a big screen here in the marketplace so that everybody can look to this experiment, which happens in a corner of the Flex Lab. And also, for example, the Flex Lab, there are partition walls. You can separate this big area. You can make it in smaller partitions. And other science lab, and at the end, because it's a very loud makerspace with drilling machines and so on. So it's a really cool mix. Open space, smaller labs with partition walls, and also an experiment garden. And the last example, and you can look on our website also, on the Hundo website in the part main space, all these projects. And this is a renovation, not a new building, it's a renovation. And the question was, can we transform the old structure of the building in a new one? And the old one was normally chemistry, biology, the preparation areas, physics, auditorium. And we discussed with all the people that we should rebuild the old walls not at the same place. So we want to make it in another way. And we designed such a concept with a marketplace, with teacher zone. We transformed the old auditorium. And you see a picture of that, the old auditorium with another look and feel, makerspace, teacher zone, big experiment areas, Flex Lab, experiment garden. So it's a paradise to learn there. And if I would be a kid again, I wanted to go there to school. So this is the last example, some pictures how these rooms or zones can look like. Flex Labs with really flexible caddies, with experiments, with cabinets where you can bring the caddies inside. Everything is mobile. We learn much about schools. When they have a small room, they can transform it to a makerspace. In the past, they only have physics, chemistry, biology, for example. And they said we want to have an interdisciplinary room, and then we built a makerspace. Other spaces. This is also a nice project from Elena from Russia, and you also see here separation walls in the middle. You have a big hall, but you also can separate that to smaller division, to smaller partitions. Makerspace, a mobile sink, for example. And this is in cooperation with Festo, also for higher education, to make electronic laboratories and mechatronic. And everything is mobile. You see the tables are mobile. You can switch the tabletop. The lab cells are mobile. The cabinets are mobile, and everything fits together. So that's all for the moment. Thanks a lot for joining us. And now we can go to the Q&A session. So back again. Now we have a Q&A session, and I look to the chat. There are 3 questions at the moment. I will start. Perhaps the first question is to you, Svenja, and the question is, how do these schools ensure? I think the question is after your impulse, Svenja. So how do these schools ensure that new and sometimes revolutionary approaches work? What happens to the students if or when they fail? In another word, how do they ensure that those experiments are safe for kids? I also publish this question, and then you can also look. So Svenja,
Very good questions. Oftentimes it's hard to, when you experiment, to have an evidence-based approach right from the start. It's often tricky. So basically, one of their criteria measurement for success is, how do these students do in terms of results, test results. It's often, the key metric, unfortunately, how do they perform in exams and tests, and they see if the pedagogy worked or not. For me, it's not enough. It's clearly not enough. Exams are not everything. We should also measure some more qualitative data like well-being. But honestly, I visited all these schools. I spend a lot of time with the kids. Sometimes a few days, and I really, I enjoyed it because kids were really happy. I mean, it was one of the most. These schools that I showed you were one of the most, welcoming, and kids were so happy, and I never saw that anywhere else. So from what I felt, they were quite happy. But again, I think it's very important to also have some kind of evidence-based methods, working with the research teams to also measure the other things than just the grades and the exam results. So I'm really pushing for the evidence-based approach. And having schools collaborate with research labs to make sure that what they do also have is proven to work, to make these kids happier, to teach them 21st century skills, and of course to succeed in university entry exams. I mean, it's that still matters, but I think learning about 21st century skills also matters, and well-being definitely matters. So yeah, that's my answer. Thanks for your question.
Okay, another question to you, Svenja. You talk about the future of education and new skills, but how can we teach soft skills in the most effective way?
That's a good question. Can we learn, to be creative? Can we learn to think critically? Is that something you learn? Yes, you can learn it, definitely. And for me, teaching differently, in the teaching method you use, you are developing other types of skills. If you teach in a very top-down way, where you talk and your students listen to you, when it's a very traditional, very top-down, you won't teach skills like collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. If you teach with project-based learning, for example, or with the flipped classroom methodology, flipping your classroom, or with the problem-based methodology, problem-based learning, then you put students in the position where they are responsible for their own learning.
Elena, I have a question to you. We can study at home remotely in online school. Why do we need a school building now? And why is it necessary to install good and right equipment in school laboratories when you can come into a neighboring university or techno park and work there?
Okay, I suppose that today we can get rid of the individual work in the building, but we just need to cooperate. Cooperation is a key word. We go to the school building to cooperate, to meet people, to discuss with them, to work together. That's why it's very important to keep this cooperation in laboratory as well, in a workshop, in broadcasting studio as well. So everything for collaboration are very, very nice to do in school building. All other type of activity, very nice to move to other urban space, to other spaces of city. What do you think about it? For example, your homework you could make home, your concentration you could make in cafe everywhere, but collaboration should be in school. What do you think?
Yeah, I also think the same. Collaboration and all these social things should happen in the school. and everything you consume, you can make it in silence at home. You can watch a YouTube video from your teacher or another student and focus work. But for collaboration, communication, this is the most important thing. You need a social place. You're right. Yeah, I agree with you. So just a moment. Svenja was out. I have to bring her again to the meeting. And another question to you, Elena. We are talking about the importance of flexible spaces. A universal school classroom can be flexible and mobile, but how to make a laboratory, a workshop, a culinary studio transformable and changeable? If to be honest, you have answered this question several minutes ago. We really have to think about the flexible ceiling and engineering system. For example, do you remember your nice ceiling system from the Wagner company? It's really useful, and it's really could adapt laboratory space for different purposes, because we don't know what will be tomorrow, which science we will learn tomorrow. That's why we have to adapt to it. Yeah, I also think the same. So we tested with Svenja again.
No, sorry for that. My Teams just crashed. So yeah, no, I was just saying that pedagogy plays a huge role in what type of skills you are developing for students also. So that is important. And if you teach in a problem-based or project-based learning way, then you make sure that your students are responsible for their own learning. And you put them in a situation where they are engaged, much more engaged than, when they're just listening to a professor or a teacher talk all the time. So you really, engagement for me is key. And if they are engaged, they will be creative. They will solve problems quicker. They will collaborate more easier because they are working towards the same goal in a group, and the pedagogical methods that you are using do that and can enhance that. So for me, it all goes through pedagogy and the pedagogical method you're using.
Okay, a question from my side to you, Svenja. You traveled 19 countries, and are there significant differences between the countries or continents in terms of learning cultures, basis, or other things? Can you say something about that, or should I read your book for that?
Read my book if you want to know more about Europe. That's a good start. No, but honestly, just to answer your question, yes, every country is different. Even if in a continent, on the same continent, you'll have different contexts. So it's so important to really understand the local context, because in Finland, an innovation doesn't mean at all the same thing than in China. And I'm taking two completely different and extreme examples, because in Southeast Asia, China, South Korea, Japan, innovation should be, should help students get better grades. That's it. It's a very competitive system with very few places for the university, but a lot of students. So it's a massive system where really the goal is get the best results, and you are in a constant competition with other students. And so if innovation can help you get better test results, then it's a go. In Finland and in the Nordics, innovation should be for the well-being of the students. Will the students be more, at ease with themselves, with the others? In Finland and in Denmark, for example, you teach empathy in primary school. It's now in the curriculum, in the official curriculum. So, that are the innovations. It's for the well-being, for students to better know themselves, to better know others, to better, interact with the world. So it has nothing to do. So yeah, it's super important to understand the different contexts when we talk about innovation in education.
Okay, and another question from me. If you were a student again, in which school would you love to start and why? Do you have a favorite one in the world?
Yeah, actually I do, and I didn't mention it today because I had so many examples. I have too many examples. I cannot mention like all the examples from all the 19 countries. But for me, the most incredible school that I would love personally love to go to is the Green School in Bali. It's a very innovative school based, the whole space is made out of bamboos. So it's like you are like within like a bamboo forest. The school has been built within the bamboo forest, and it's a school that teaches you about sustainability. So everything you learn there, although you prepare like, your baccalaureate and stuff, you learn it through the sustainability prism, and you're in the middle of nature, and you have to take care of a specific garden. You have to grow plants and vegetables, and yeah, and it's really amazing. It's still unfortunately a private school, and it's still, it's not that accessible because it costs a lot to attend, but I have, high hopes that this model will, pop up in other countries, and that, governments will also make sure that they can develop and fund schools like these.
Okay, thanks a lot. Now we can go to Elena again. So Elena, I have a question for you. The investment, I know your projects in Russia, and I'm a fan of your work, a really fan. And all the pictures, the investment to have inspiring schools and professional STEM labs seems to be very important in Russia. I think they will invest. They are investing much money also in the STEM labs. Why is it that way?
I don't agree with you. I suppose it's easy to create innovative and nice space. It doesn't depend on the money you have, because you have to think about the logic, about the pedagogical part, educational part, and then to adapt your content into the appropriate frame. That's why it doesn't depend on the money. If you have enough investments for the high-class laboratory, it's very good. It's investment for future, of course. But if you don't have enough money, does it mean that you don't need laboratory or you will get in laboratory? No, you will get it, but it's another type. We have to adapt. We have to adapt to your budget, to adapt to your goals, to your content, to your pedagogical idea. Architect and design is a frame for the content. So it doesn't depend on the money.
Oh, okay. And before the session starts, you said to me you have some pictures on a slide. Do you want to share some pictures at the end of this session? I mean now?
I will be happy to do it, but do you know that I have small problems with sharing?
Okay, we can try, and if it's not possible, then I think we can finish.
So it's unfortunately frozen. That's why I suppose we need to appoint new meeting and new webcast and to continue our discussion.
Okay, and so thanks a lot for so many participants to this section. I think education is a very important thing, and thanks a lot to Elena for your presentation, and also Svenja for the insights of the world. And I think every participant needs your book to learn more about that. And so thanks a lot to you both. And I want to share at the end, I hope I have luck, our next Labcafé online. It's on the 9th of February. We talk about Innovation Center, also exciting projects and examples from the world. And you can go on our website and register for the next events. We have a really cool series about that. And if you have questions, you can write us an email. I can also to Elena or to Svenja, and I can redirect this email to them. So thanks a lot for joining us. Happy day for you, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.